So this week here on the Vinyl Guide, we are excited to welcome legendary bass player Rudy Sarzo to the show. Rudy, mi amigo, ¿cómo está?
Bien, bien, Nate. ¿Cómo estás?
And that's about as far as my high school Spanish got.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah.
So Rudy, you've had a phenomenal career, but let's get one thing right here.
Mm.
Your real given name isn't simply Rudy Sarzo, is it?
No, I was named Rudy Sarzo when I moved from Miami to West New York, New Jersey. And my first day that I walked into my classroom, a public school number 5, my teacher said, I sat behind the desk, and I started hearing him calling out, Rudy, Rudy. I'm like, I don't know. So he says, yes, you back there. And I look up, and he says, yes, you, Rudy. I said, no, I'm Rodolfo. And he says, no, you're Rudy from now on. So that's Rudy. That's me. Yeah.
What is your real name is really long, isn't it?
Well, it's not my real name anymore. Reality is just, an morphing organism. So it's like today, right now, I am Rudy Sarzo, and that's it, But my birth name is Rodolfo Maximiliano Sarzo Lavie Grande Ruiz Pareixomon. Something like that.
Something like that.
I'm just glad I changed it to Rudy Sarzo because I couldn't, imagine writing emails at Rodolfo Maximiliano Sarzo Lavie. It's like, come on, give me a break.
You would need 2 or 3 driver's licenses just to kind of have your name listed across it. So it's
exactly, yeah.
Very good. So now, originally, before you made the move from Florida to New York, you were born in Cuba, yeah?
I was born in Cuba, yes.
And you came over as a boy. How old were you when your parents brought you?
I was 1961, and I was about a couple of months shy of being 11.
Oh, so you have very vivid memories of being in Cuba.
Yes, I do.
And have you ever been back?
No. I checked this morning, and it's still a communist dictatorship. So, so I have no desire to go there, I have as much want to go there as I do to go to a resort in North Korea.
Well, I hear the cabbage is really nice there. So anyway.
I could always go to Little Korea, Koreatown in L.A. to get that.
So you've had, a career that really every musician's dream. You played alongside so many greats, and I'll just list a few of the guitar players: Randy Rhoads, Tony McAlpine, Steve Vai, Yngwie, Michelangelo. And you've always been associated with rock. However, do you venture outside of rock?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I unless it's something that it's a little bit more on the progressive side of it, or what I listen to the most is what I grew up listening to, which is either the Beatles or the Who or Led Zeppelin or the Rolling Stones, and then prog rock, just about anything from Yes to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and and so on. They just happen to have bass players that I really respect and I admire, and I'm inspired by them. So it's basically whatever music to me, which I listen to all different types of music. It could be fusion, Weather Report and Return to Forever, or Miles Davis. I have a huge collection of Miles Davis records, and so on. So it all depends what I'm in the mood for to learn and be inspired as a musician. So I listen to everything.
Oh, okay. So you've had your collection is quite vast. Do you listen to many vinyl records? Do you have a record collection?
I used to, of course I did, and I still kept some of the vinyls. I used to have a huge vinyl system, and through the years, I kept moving from house to house, and I spent so much time on the road that it doesn't really make sense to I do what most people that travel a lot do today, which is to listen to streaming.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I fully recognize with me, being a vinyl baby, the superior sound quality, not only sound but emotional quality of vinyl, because vinyl is as close as it is when you're in the control room of a studio. listening to the playback. You hear instruments that once it compressed down to MP3, they don't come out. They don't stand out. But when you hear it on vinyl, it's right there, perfectly clear.
So when you've gone through your career and worked on the different recording projects, do you always think of the end purpose is to actually have a record, not necessarily an MP3 or a CD, but to have a playable record?
It's the same philosophy as I've always had before different formats were created. I started recording back in the 70s before CDs, barely we had cassettes back then. I mean, as a matter of fact, the Walkman is what really put the cassette industry, took it over from the LP, from the vinyl, from the LP. But again, I've been touring since 1981 extensively. Before that, I was a traveling musician trying to make it in the industry, but not as an actual worldwide recording artist. That happened in 1981 when I joined Ozzy. And for portability's sake, we just brought with us, our Walkman and the cassettes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Now, you started just before Ozzy. You were playing in the band Quiet Riot. Of course, this is when they were a small band in L.A., doing clubs, trying to get a deal. But prior to then, Quiet Riot had put out a couple of Japanese releases. What do you recall about those releases?
Yeah, the first one was released before I even joined the band. The second one, it was released right after I joined the band, so I was not involved in the recording process of that one.
You are on the back cover and everything, but you were brought in when they were doing the photo shoots, yeah?
But yeah, and there was a big falling out between the bass player that recorded that record and the band, so they didn't feel like they didn't want to call him back into it.
Ah, fair enough. Well, you were going to be the guy that was going to be playing live at that point anyway, so why not? So,
well, yeah. By the time the record came out, I already been playing live with them.
Mm-hmm. And the band at that time, yourself, Kevin Dubrow, of course, Randy Rhoads was in the band as well. Was the band really?
Drew Forsythe, Drew Forsythe on drums.
On drums, okay.
Yeah.
The band, I guess, was very excited about the record. They were hoping that the Japanese release was going to result in some action in the U.S.
Absolutely, that was a strategy to actually have an album that they could get the licensing to distribute outside of Japan. Yeah, but what happened was it was right at the time where new wave and punk was really getting strong within the industry. So there was really no interest from the record labels about the type of music that we were doing.
How was it that the band was able to secure a deal in Japan so remotely from Los Angeles?
Yeah, Japan at that time, I'm talking about the late 70s, was very much a fertile ground. It had not been saturated as it is today, because even today there's huge domestic Japanese acts. That did not exist back in the 70s. I'm talking about rock and roll,
Mm-hmm.
That was like non-existent back then. So basically the manager sold the band in Japan based on the image of the band. It had a very young image, and of course a guitar hero that was blonde, which especially back in the 70s, that was like a must. You must have a blonde, member in the band for it to, because, there's not a whole lot of blondes in Japan.
Right.
It comes down to that, Yeah, as ridiculous as it seems today, that's the way it was back in the 70s.
No, look, my family and I went to Japan last year, and my wife is blonde, and yeah, there were a lot of stares, even now, and a lot of pictures and that sort of thing. So yeah, I agree, very unique.
Yeah.
But of course, she didn't play guitar nearly as good as Randy. So
very well. I mean, nobody plays guitar like Randy, except for Randy.
So Quiet Riot released those albums. Of course, trying to get some action together around them, and of course, a lot of local success as well. Never did a tour of Japan though, no.
That configuration, no. It's not like Randy never got to tour Japan, even with Ozzy.
So at one point, Randy left the band. He got the audition for Ozzy's band, and of course, they loved him right away. he went away and started recording with Ozzy and the band, and then you received a phone call one evening from Sharon. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was sharing a room in Kevin DeBro's apartment, and I was sleeping on the floor on a sheet, and I get the phone call from Sharon. At the time, I was committed to another band that I really enjoyed, being a member of, which was a band called Angel. They were in transition from Casablanca Records, trying to get another record deal. So there was no money involved. I mean, I was not on salary or anything. I was just a member of the band making demos at the record plant with Angel. And, needless to say, I was a starving musician. So I got the phone call to come on down on audition for Ozzy based on Randy's recommendation. And I first time I turned it down because I was committed. I made a commitment to these guys. And then, I thought about it afterwards after I hung up the phone and thought that, wow, I missed out on an opportunity to play with Randy again and maybe get off the floor.
You got the phone call that you initially rejected. And by the way, we just had Vinny Ampasy on the show, and he talked about also getting a phone call from Sharon, which he rejected. But he didn't get the second call.
I got the second call the next day from Ozzy. See, they needed somebody who they could trust. And if they were in L.A., if they could have probably gotten somebody in England that they knew, who had some sort of a legacy to them, somebody who had done touring and recording and stuff like that. But here they are in L.A. getting ready to put the band together to start the American tour. They already have Tommy Aldridge on drums. And I guess the people that they auditioned, they didn't think that they were like trustworthy as individuals, because, I'm pretty sure there were some great musicians that actually auditioned for the gig. But since Randy knew me personally, I have been, with him playing in Quiet Riot and also teaching at his mom's school, Musonia. So we got to spend a lot of time. He knew I was not an alcoholic or a drug addict and that I could play. And that I could be trustworthy, So Randy put his reputation on the line, and based on Randy's recommendation, they trusted Randy, so that's how I got the gig.
So let me set the stage here for the listeners. A lot of them, when they think of Ozzy and Sharon, they think of modern Ozzy and Sharon, but this is 1981. Ozzy is still married to someone else.
Thelma, yes.
Yeah,
Thelma, yes.
And Sharon is still deeply connected with her father at Jet Records, Don Arden. So this is a totally different reality than it is today. What was it like dealing with Ozzy and Sharon in those days?
It was, simply put, Sharon was the matriarch. I mean, she's younger than I am. But she had always had that, she took care of business so well, and she was always very protective, not just of Ozzy, but the whole band as an entity, So she was like, she kept everything together. She was, doing an intervention with Ozzy, 24/7, keeping him out of trouble. And there was a single purpose, which was to have the band be a success. That was it. Whatever it took, and Sharon, she, we'll travel in the same bus together and, hung out together. As a matter of fact, when I would get off the road, I would stay with them at their home up in the Benedict Canyon. And, so, it was an incredible experience. Ozzy and Sharon, they were so generous with me. They took great care of me, and I'll never, and I will always be grateful for that.
And when you're touring, it's on a small tour bus. You guys are very close to one another. It's not, planes even really at this point. It's you're living and eating and breathing and everything else that goes with it. With Ozzy and Sharon and Randy and Tommy. Really 24/7. In terms of that, it was a bit of a hand-to-mouth existence. At what point did that start to turn? The fire and the popularity of Ozzy kind of went from one level to a whole different level. What do you think that catalyst was?
I would say from the very first show. as soon as I would say from the very, very first show that the audience got to see what the band was all about. Because you have Ozzy, of course. Ozzy. They knew Ozzy from Black Sabbath. An iconic singer. And then all of a sudden, you got this guitar player. That to me was like, wow, check this out. Of course, some of radio was playing Crazy Train, and or maybe something else. Maybe I don't know. But it was mostly Crazy Train. So it was. It's not like it is today, where you get YouTube and you can do a show, and then everything becomes viral. The video becomes viral, and then millions of people watch you play and stuff like that. Back then, it was word of mouth. And touring was a little bit different. They had a 100-mile rule with the promoters. They could actually book a gig about 100 miles from the other gig that you did the night before. So gigs were really concentrated. We did a lot of A, B, and C venues. We did mostly the A venues or markets on the weekend. And then just to keep the band going, we did a lot of B and C venues, the smaller towns, basically. And so we'll get like multiple. Literally, I talked to fans that would watch an Ozzy concert, and then go home and call their friends and say, "Hey, listen, they're playing about an hour or an hour and a half from here tomorrow. Let's all go." So it will multiply like that. So they started following the band within, because we used to play like we would do like the Northeast for about 6 weeks. Then take a break, and then hit the South, and then take a break and hit the Midwest. So it was all very drivable from one town to the other. So that's how we got a following, and it was very immediate.
And in your book, by the way, you describe it very well. The book is Off the Rails by Rudy Sarzo. You can get it at Amazon or from Rudy's website.
Actually, the only places to get it is Amazon on print and Kindle, as a Kindle download. And also my autographed version of the book with a poster, you can get that from the ChromaCast website, where I actually signed them and autographed them, signed them, and they're available there,
Oh, excellent. Okay. That ChromaCast, that's the drum company, yeah?
Yes, ChromaCast. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Excellent. All right. So the songs on the first two albums, of course, Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman, were they brand new, or were they reworked Quiet Riot songs, or were there riffs in there, elements?
Yeah, I would say there's more Quiet Riot influence on the first album. Of course, I didn't join the band. Tommy Aldridge and I did not join the band until both two records were recorded. Mm-hmm. So Blizzard of Oz was, I could hear like a lot of influence from Quiet Riot, because, it just makes sense. It's like this, Randy, Quiet Riot had been working on new material, and so Randy had all these riffs. So he joins Ozzy, and just like it would happen in any situation, people get together and say, "Hey, what do you got?" "Well, I got this riff, and it goes like this and that and the other thing." So before you know it, you're basically reworking what you've been doing with other people that never actually became a song. They were just ideas, and those ideas evolve into new songs and new riffs. So that direction and that influence was very much so in, let's say Crazy Train, which is very diatonic to the key of A, or Goodbye to Romance, which is kind of a little bit similar to Winners Take All, which Randy wrote and got recorded on the Condition Critical record, which again, it's another diatonic song that Randy wrote. It wasn't until Diary of a Madman that Randy started exploring his songwriting and going beyond that. And what's amazing about it is that those two records were recorded within a couple of months from each other. So his songwriting direction just took a gigantic leap, within a couple of months. I mean, sometimes it takes people, decades to do that. But with Randy, it was like, no, here we go. Something completely different than we just did 2 months ago. It was just amazing.
That's interesting. Now, I know you weren't involved in the actual recording of the records, but I'm sure you probably had conversations around it. What was the strategy with recording both records within a couple months of one another?
To stay on the road as long as possible at one shot. It's more cost effective to do that rather than to break down, get rid of the real crew, and then put it together again. So the strategy, and I believe it was Sharon's strategy, was to put together 2 albums, come back-to-back recording, 2 in one, take a short break, a month actually, and then continue with the other record. Because I mean, otherwise it would have taken 6 to 8 months in between albums and tours.
All right. Well, that makes total sense. So,
Yeah.
but the distance between them, musically, is way more than a couple of months. I mean, like you said.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the growth. I mean, the musical growth. Yes, is spectacular. It's like if the Beatles recorded, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and then the second record you got Sgt. Pepper. Basically.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just like that.
Do you know if Randy had other songs he was working on for the third LP?
He was concentrating so much on improving his classical guitar playing that most of the time he just spent it practicing his classical music backstage.
And when we say classical music, are we talking about like the composers? Are we talking like flamenco guitar? Like what direction do you think he was going?
Kind of like what he did with D, the song D on the Blizzard of Oz record. Matter of fact, what I heard from Randy was that Ozzy had to fight to get D, the instrumental, on Blizzard of Oz record because the record company didn't wanted to include it, and Randy made it mandatory that it will happen.
And what was Randy and Ozzy's relationship like at that point?
It was good. I mean, they had some disagreements about certain things, but overall, I mean, there was a lot of mutual respect and admiration, of course.
They would argue about some things like any creative partners would, but there seemed to be a real, true love there that really, I mean, Ozzy and Sharon still emotionally are touched to this day, when they talk about Randy.
Of course, yeah. Of course.
At one point, there was every night you guys had to play a couple of Black Sabbath songs. I mean, that's what Ozzy was known for. However, in your book, you talk about a bit of a rift starting when the record company wanted Ozzy to record a whole album of Black Sabbath songs live.
Yes, it did happen. Randy felt that he had committed himself, to spending time building his career as a composer and a guitar player with Blizzard of Oz and Diary of the Madman albums, and he felt that for him to record Black Sabbath covers was going to be a setback. So he wasn't happy about that. But that was a decision that went beyond Ozzy. It was done by the record company. So Ozzy was in a bind. He had to contracts were signed and so on. It was like it had to be done.
But the record company was actually Don Arden at that point. Yeah, I mean, he could have swayed it one way or another.
No. I mean, once you make a commitment to do that, you have to take into consideration that there was a race at the time. I'm talking about 1981. Things were very different. There was a race and competition between Black Sabbath and Ozzy to see who was going to come out in front, who was going to win, right? And already Black Sabbath had plans to record Live Evil. So this was the Ozzy's camp saying, well, if they do that, then we are going to have to retaliate with Speak of the Devil. I don't even think it was named Speak of the Devil at the time that it was decided to do that. But that was the situation.
And was there a very visible competition with Black Sabbath? Was that part of the conversation that was behind the scenes? Like, oh, now Black Sabbath and Dio are playing in this city. We can't play in that city for a number of months, or did that play into
No. It never really came down to that. I mean, because we were our own entity. But as far as who was who, it was very competitive. I mean, I even talked about it with Ronnie when I was playing in the band with him. It was a major competition going on between both camps.
So Ozzy and Randy had a bit of a falling out over the recording of Black Sabbath songs. How was that resolved?
Well, Randy and Ozzy talked about it, and he came up with a with a solution that, okay, I'll make the record. And he wanted to go back to school. So he said, look, I'm going to make the record and one more tour, and then I want to go back and get my master's in music, And that was pretty much where it was left at the time of his passing. Now, I'm pretty sure, Sharon B. is very persuasive. They would have had some kind of arrangement where, at a certain point with Ozzy, Zakk Wylde was able to have his own entity and also tour with Ozzy. I'm pretty sure we'll come up to something like that, where Randy could have pursued his education to get his master's in music and also still be a member of Ozzy.
So there was peace between them.
Okay, I mean we're in a very small bus. There has to be peace, of course. Yeah.
So so then comes the events around the crash, and you were perhaps the last person to speak to Randy before he got on that plane.
Well, last person in the bus. I'm pretty sure when he got out of the bus, he spoke with Jake Duncan, Don Airey, Rachel, who was in the bus with him, and the and the pilot, our bus driver.
But he invited you to go up in that plane.
Yes, he did. That was the last time I saw him.
Yeah.
And he woke me up. Yeah, I was in my bunk. He woke me up, and I pulled over the curtains of the bunk, and he was standing on the doorway, about to step out the bus, and he's invited me, and I said, no, thanks. I'd just rather wait till we get to the hotel. I'm going to lay in the sun, and I closed my curtains and went back to sleep.
And then you heard the event, obviously, felt it. Did you know right away that something major had gone wrong?
Well, I thought we were on the freeway and that we had been in a car accident, like a vehicle accident, that we got hit by a car or we hit a car or something on the freeway. I never expected that we had been hit by a plane.
And in the coming really weeks, after Randy had died, within days, really, you guys were auditioning guitarists. How did you guys deal with those sort of responsibilities so quickly after your friend had passed?
Well, it was very simple. We all knew that if Sharon canceled the tour, Ozzy would have drank himself to death. So this was a way of keeping him alive, just keeping him busy. Mm-hmm. That's all it was. And of course, fulfilling the commitments that we have. But priority number one is just keep Ozzy occupied.
And within, I'd say, I think in your book, about 7 or 8 days, you were already in rehearsals with Bernie Tormé as a replacement. You had to take a break from those rehearsal sessions to attend Randy's funeral. So it was that quick that you guys were gearing up to be back on the road.
Yeah, I mean, we would take a break, attend Rachel's and Randy's services, and continue with rehearsals. We were shell shocked anyway, so it was it's we were trying to find answers and deal with the emotional aspect of it, and we really didn't even have time to mourn. It was just we were basically on cruise control, basically.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any guilt?
Guilt.
Any guilt around what had happened?
No, I mean, I can't be guilty of something that I'm not responsible for. I mean, it was a terrible thing that happened, and nobody even thought that something like this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, what could I have done any different? Mm-hmm. No, I have no guilt. No guilt. I mean, sometimes you start wondering, how come it happened to one person and not to you, and things like that. And, you can't really be punishing yourself for something that happened like that when all you were doing was you went to sleep.
And that's a very mature approach. I imagine a wisdom that's been, I guess, formed or sharpened by time. But at the time when it happened, or in the months or even years shortly after it happened, there's always the capacity for survivor's guilt. What if, a lot of scenarios that kind of run through your head? What if I'd stopped, and what if this had happened? What if this was slightly different? Were you able to deal with that as a young man?
You know, with age and certain experiences, I've come to find out the what ifs. If you actually get a second chance, the outcome will be exactly the same. So, yeah, again, you know, I mean, personally, it wasn't as much as the survival guilt, because, you know, like I just mentioned before, you know, you start wondering how come we're alive and things like that. Then you start putting pieces together, you know, and what I gather from all the pieces of information that I got from Jake Duncan and Don Airy, who were actually on the ground, and Don Airy took photos of the plane approaching the bus when it crashed, was that there was a struggle inside of the plane. And the struggle was from Randy trying to keep the pilot from completely crashing into the bus. So what I got, you know, from putting all the pieces together was that Randy saved our lives, you know. And so what do you do for somebody that saved your life, you know? The least I could do was actually, at a time when there was so much speculation on the internet regarding his death, was to actually set the record straight and write a book about it. That's all I did, you know. And with writing the book, I got the greatest gift. I got closure. I didn't even know that after 20, 25 years, that what I needed was closure in my life regarding that chapter, you know. And that was my biggest reward, even before he sold a copy, even before anybody read the book, the fact that I was able to get closure from it. You know, so, you know, I did move on. It did become extremely painful to get up on stage after the crash. You know, everything remained the same, even the intro to Diary of a Madman, which was the opening theme when we got up on stage and the show began. The first thing you hear is Randy playing, but then you realize he's not there. And there's somebody else playing guitar, you know, from Bernie Tormé on to Brad Gillis, you know. So the only way that I could actually deal with it was to become robotic. You know, I just shielded myself and just play notes. And I didn't realize that until I actually watched a video that became known as the Speak of the Devil presentation of the actual Diary of a Madman tour from Irvine in California. And that video was shown on MTV Halloween 1982. But I was watching the edits. You know, they had like a rough cut of the video, and I realized how robotic I had become. I couldn't even look at the audience. I couldn't look at the guys in the band. I was just trying to survive each show. And because it was painful, extremely painful. That's the reason why I left, you know, one of the biggest bands in the world at the time to go into the complete unknown with Quiet Riot. You know, the mental health version, because I needed to put the joy of playing back in my life again.
So let's talk about that a bit. You've just gone through this traumatic experience. One of your best friends is gone. You're shutting yourself down emotionally. You're artistically. You're going through the motions. But then you get invited to play on a track with your old band, Quiet Riot.
Well, what happened was Kevin had a band called Dubrow in between the Randy Rose version of Quiet Riot and the mental health version of Quiet Riot. And I used to play with Kevin. You know, I was staying at his apartment, and I would play with him. And one of the songs that was on the set list was Thunderbird. So I get the call from Kevin that he was making. It was basically demos or recordings. It wasn't like officially the band was not signed or had a record deal yet. What they had was a production deal with a company called Pasha. And, I wasn't, during a break from Ozzy on tour, he invited me to come over to the studio and record Thunderbird as a tribute to Randy.
And being in the band with Kevin and having that experience with the new band reinvigorated you to some degree.
Well, what happened is I went in to record, and not only was Kevin there, it was Frankie Banelli, who I had been playing with him on and off since 1972. This is 1982. So like for 10 years, Frankie and I would have been, rhythm section partners. And Carlos Cavazza, who I briefly knew from being in a circuit of Choir Riot playing with his band, Snow, on certain dates around LA. So, it just felt safe. It felt like an emotional refuge for me to be playing with the guys away from, so many memories. Because yes, I did play with Randy in Quiet Riot, but nothing like I did with him, being on tour, where constantly and just being with him every single day in Ozzy. That's how I got to really know Randy. Not just by playing, 2 times, a month, basically. 2 weekends a month. That was our average with Choir Riot back in the day, with Randy. We would do like a play at the Starwood a couple of weekends or place outside of LA. So my deepest memories of Randy were actually playing with Ozzy. So I got together with my friends and and it felt really good. I mean, by the time I left the session, I had already recorded 4 or 5 songs that wound up in the Mental Health record. Mm-hmm. And then later on, it became a band, and we got a record deal. We were signed to the record deal and tour. The record came out, Mental Health.
And at some point you had to let Sharon know that you're kind of going in this other direction. Obviously, she probably didn't take that news particularly well. How long did it take to get back into her good graces? Or are you?
As far as I know, I'm in her good graces, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, you don't want to be on the outside of that club.
No, but, I mean, who wants to be in bad graces with anybody?
Right.
Life's too short, I don't know. I think, with time, once it was, they treated me so well. I don't think they expected me to actually leave. They didn't take the news very well, and I can see why. I don't blame them. But I needed to do that. I mean, put it this way: if Ozzy could have left Ozzy to do something else, he would have. That's how wounded emotionally everybody was. I needed to get away from that.
You joined Quiet Riot full time. Obviously, they had a huge success with the album Mental Health. Toured on that, the album Metal Health. Toured heavily on that. Recorded Condition Critical, but at one point the band started to implode a bit, perhaps accelerated by Kevin Dubrow talking a bit too much. When did you know that was a problem?
Well, as soon as he started bad rapping every other band, out there, I don't think people had really a chance to get to know where Kevin was coming from, And in retrospect, some of the things he said, he was correct, except that he was not very diplomatic about it. You have to be diplomatic in certain aspects, mm-hmm. Especially if you're the spokesperson for the band.
But it wasn't a one-time event. It may have happened at one point. Did you guys have a band meeting and say, Kevin, just, STFU? And then what was his attitude towards it?
No, because that was Kevin. Kevin was Kevin until the day he left us. So there was no way that you could say, listen, you have to change. And no, because it wasn't going to happen. Mm. It never did. Kevin remained Kevin until his last breath.
Mm. And as that was becoming more of a problem, you decided to leave Quiet Riot, and then was your next move to Whitesnake?
Uh, in a jagged sort of way, yeah, it took 2 years in between. Yeah, Tommy Alders and I, we were asked to join the band Whitesnake right before they went in the studio to record the '87 record. But personally, since Whitesnake was the support band for Quiet Riot during the 1984 Condition Critical tour, I have witnessed the friction between David and John Sykes. And I just didn't want to go from one situation to another, so I declined. And Tommy and I, we kept pursuing what we were doing. And it wasn't until David cleaned house and it was a brand new band that we decided, okay, I think it's pretty safe to come in here now because that friction did not exist anymore. You know?
And the band at that point was yourself, Tommy, David Coverdale, of course, on vocals, and Adrian Vandenberg and Steve Vai on
No, actually, it was Vivian Campbell first.
Oh, Vivian Campbell. Oh, okay.
On the '87 tour, yeah.
Okay. So that was a post-Dio Vivian Campbell.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was.
Oh, you guys sure swim in the same sea there.
It's a very small corral when you get to the top, yeah.
What was it like playing in Whitesnake? Was that, I mean, obviously you stayed there for, I want to say 7-8 years. So obviously it must have.
My last tour with Whitesnake was '94. So I joined in '87. Yeah, it's about 7 years. In between, David did the Coverdale Page record.
And in terms of David Coverdale, do you guys, is there still love there? Is there any opportunity for future work with David and any?
Oh no. I mean, David is the one who calls the shots. So but yeah, I really loved being in the band. I mean, it was fantastic at every level. Yeah.
And of course, your career's gone on to. We could talk for days on this. Yngwie toured with Dio. You joined Blue Oyster Cult for quite some time.
Yeah. What happened was I only did like a U.S. Short tour with Yngwie in 2004, and during that tour, I got the call from Wendy Dio to come in the studio and record what became Ronnie's last Dio record, which is Master of the Moon. But I was committed. I was committed to Yngwie. I wasn't about to, leave him in the middle of the tour. So I told him, look, if you guys are still interested in me joining the band, once I'm done with this tour, I can come in, So yeah, they went on. They recorded Master of the Moon with Jeff Pilson, great record. And then when I was done with Yngwie, I officially became a member of Dio, and I was with Ronnie from 2004 until he left us. So yeah, and that was hard, man. Because I mean, that you're never gonna work with somebody of that caliber. There was only one Ronnie James Dio. I mean, there's very few people in that very thin stratosphere, and there's nothing like going on stage with that. You're invincible, when you get up there, and what a wonderful human being, So yeah, it was quite a shock to the system to lose Ronnie. But getting back to Blue Oyster Cult, so what happened was, within a couple of years of me being a member of Dio, Ronnie gets together with the Sabbath guys, and they call it Heaven and Hell. So they start making records, and they start touring. Meanwhile, Ronnie, whenever he had some time off from Heaven and Hell, he would put together Dio again and go on tour with that. So we would tour every year. But in between that, I had a lot of, open time. So I get a call from Blue Oyster Cult, and we work it out that whenever I had to tour with Dio, they would find me a sub, and meanwhile, we just tour with them, which was fantastic. Because I grew up listening to Blue Oyster Cult. So that was, to play those songs, hang out with Buck and Eric and the current lineup. That was great, wonderful.
Oh yeah, what a great band! Look, Blue Oyster Cult is always been one of my favorites. I hope one day they get really the respect that they deserve. They've always seemed to be a bit of an underground band. Those who know, but there's a lot of people who still aren't as familiar with some of their deep cuts.
When I joined the band, I had to learn like 40 songs because every set was different every night. Eric Bloom puts the set together, and you don't know what we're going to play until like 5 minutes before we go on. And so I had to learn 40 songs to be ready at any time. Also, if somebody yelled in the audience a certain deep cut, we will play it, So I was very familiar with the obvious, with the usual suspects. But then they would send me some songs, and I would go, I didn't know you guys were these guys, that played this song, It was incredible.
Oh yeah, that's the second to last song on the B-side from the Spectre sessions.
Yeah.
What
exactly?
Do you remember like all the different songs from? And probably not all the songs, but like if right now you were to be asked to play something from the Whitesnake sets, would you be able to recall that?
Yeah, of course. Here we go again. Is this love? Still overnight.
Mm-hmm. So it's
not a problem.
So it's like it's a bit like a muscle memory. You can go back to most of the songs that you've played live and pick them right back up.
No, I think it has to do with like songs that you really, I like to think of a set as one long song, so I'm not inspired to play one song better than the other. I just treat them the same, but there's certain stickability about certain songs, like Mr. Crowley. I can play that song anytime. Crazy Train, I don't know, songs like that. The other stuff I have to go over once or twice to kind of like refresh my memory.
So real quick here, Rudy, let's get into some listener questions. We sent out a quick announcement. We're having this conversation with you, and we got a few questions back. I think some of them are really interesting. First off, Rodolfo from Spain. Oh, here's another Rodolfo.
Yeah.
How many hours do you practice each day, and do you play any other instruments?
See, I don't practice. What I do is I play and learn. Sometimes it will be like a certain song that I set, a goal, a challenge. So I practice a challenge. If it's a certain riff or a certain piece, but I'm constantly learning and exploring the possibilities. I come to the conclusion, and this is something that I teach, when I do like rock and roll fantasy camp, that there's really no wrong notes. Because basically you got 7 notes within a scale, and the other 5, they're just transitional notes, or you're playing a little bit outside, but it's within the tone center, So I approach it that way. If I'm playing, if I like to experiment when what you would call practice. No, it's not practice. I'm actually learning. I'm searching. I'm getting illuminated about music and certain styles and information and stuff like that. So I do that constantly. If I'm not eating, if I'm not sleeping, if I'm not in the bathroom, if I'm not driving, I'm playing.
So you have a guitar in your hands several hours a day?
I have one right now.
Ah, okay. There we go. I feel so naughty.
I got a 4-string in my hand. Yes.
Ooh, what color is she? So any other
White.
instruments? Any other instruments besides bass?
It's an interesting question because yes, but I'm always trying to transpose everything that I learned from other instruments to the bass. When I seek knowledge about music, whether it be theory or sight reading or anything, I rarely go to the bass websites on YouTube. There's a couple that I go to. One is Joe Osborne and the other is Scott Divine. Those are like my go-to for the bass. But then I will go to this piano teacher named Ken Hewitt, who is fantastic with teaching theory on the piano. And that just opens up my whole world about playing the bass. because it's all about music. It's not just about playing an instrument. You know, I mean, I've been playing long enough that yes, I have, you know, a certain level of dexterity, and I know how to hold the bass and how to spread my fingers and all of that. But theory goes beyond that, and that's what I really seek. Basically, jazz theory.
So, do you listen to like Jaco Pastorius and with your mouth open, just like, oh my God, how did he do that?
Yeah, well, that's the point. It's doable. I mean, nobody plays like Jaco, of course, but nevertheless, the notes are playable.
Yeah.
So it's not yeah. You know what about Jaco? I grew up in Miami. Jaco at the time was the local guy. You know, so it was scary and inspirational at the same time. You know, because here you have Jaco, playing around town. So I used to go and watch him either playing with the Ira Sullivan Quintet or playing with Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders, and just watch him play. You know, so you do learn. I also Will Lee, from the David Letterman Orchestra, same thing. He was playing around town at the same time. We were in the same high school band circuit, So yeah, I mean, of course I'm in awe of Jaco, but nevertheless, if you break it down, it's music, and he had a beautiful way to choose notes, and the way that he broke down in sequences of fives and threes, But then again, if he was very much also influenced, if you listen to him, by people like John Coltrane and Charlie Parker, the way that they approach the instruments.
Could you see yourself at one point playing jazz in a band or doing a jazz record?
I would love to do a fusion record, something maybe kind of close to what Jeff Beck used to do with Blow by Blow or, Wired, direction like that. I don't have the vocabulary, and it would take a lifetime, and I don't think I have enough years left in my life to actually reach, the vocabulary of a true jazz player. Plus, I have too much of a rocker heart in me. I rock out, so there's a certain aggression in my playing that it's not, it's not really desirable for jazz. Fusion, yeah, because, it's a little bit more rock.
Well, it's interesting you still talk about learning music theory and really still you've got the what I think is a very healthy spirit in which that your learning never stops. And you're still involved with the Musonia Music School. Do you take lessons still?
Well, Musonia, it's Randy Rose's mom's school that she had from, many years. I used to teach there before I joined Ozzy. I have not gone back to teach there ever since. But I do support any time that, there's anything connected with Musonia, and they ask me to participate. Or Randy, Randy related events from the family, I do participate with that. Right now we are at the age, to me, the golden age of information. If, anything that you want to know or learn, it's available to us globally, so there's no excuse.
Let me get another listener question here. Jeff from San Jose, whatever happened to Randy's guitars? Where are they right now?
The family has them in storage.
Okay. Do you think they'll ever be shown or in a museum or any place like that?
That's the answer. It's a question best answered by the family.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. There was I saw an interview, I think, with Ozzy when he was doing the tribute album, and they went to pull out the polka dot V, and it still had all the stuff in there from the day of Randy's, even a half a pack of cigarettes. So that was really interesting. What involvement did you have with the tribute album?
I played on it.
Okay.
Now fast forward to about 3 years ago when they released the Speak of the Devil, which is actually the Randy Rose. I mean, not because Randy didn't play on that. It was Brett Gillis, Tommy, Ozzy, and me and Don Airy at Irvine. There was a video. You remember the one that I spoke a little while ago?
The Halloween one, yeah.
That came out as a DVD. So I was asked to write the liner notes and to do some press for that. And also I did some press for the 30-year anniversary of Blizzard and Diary. I did press for that too. But I wrote the liner notes, and because in watching it for the first time since I watched it on 1982 Halloween, 1982 on MTV, I came to realize what an emotional show it was, because we had that was in the LA area. Not just that show, but every other show that we did after Randy passed away. The courage, especially Ozzy, who had to open his mouth and sing. He had to make noise with his mouth. When I know that he was so in so much pain, to be able to deliver the caliber of shows that we did every single night, I know that it was unbearable for me. I was, and watching that show was just a reminder of that. So I was able to express myself, and make the viewer, the person who was about to watch the DVD, to prepare them for what they're actually witnessing. It wasn't just another show; it was actually a triumph of each individual to be able to deliver that performance under so much pain, emotional pain.
Yeah, I'll have to rewatch that video again with that in mind. There's one more listener question here. Lanier from Norway, looks like. Please tell us a crazy Ozzy story. I'll save you the trouble, Rudy, because Lanier, go check out Rudy's book. It's full of crazy Ozzy stories. Off the Rails. It is, I think, what is it? 400 pages, 300 pages of
about 300 pages.
All the time that Rudy had spent around Ozzy, especially in those early days. And if you want crazy Ozzy stories, that's like you could do a research project with that.
But you know what, my motivation, because you have to be motivated to spend about a year and a half of your life writing a book, was to answer the number one question I get asked when I travel around the world, which is, what was it like to play with Randy Rhoads? That was it. No other motivation. That's about it. So if you want to know what it was like to play with Randy Rhoads, it's all right in there, from my perspective.
Well, I mean, you were one of the people that's closest to him in his life. You spent so much time with him, especially during that period where people are really fascinated with. So, again, the book Off the Rails by Rudy Sarzo on Amazon. You can get it right now, in fact. It's on Kindle. You can order it, and you can be reading it within 5 minutes. Or you can go to Chromacast, chromacast.com, and pick up an autographed copy from Rudy. And of course, please buy it. It supports the artists, and it's a wonderful book and a lot of real interesting stuff in there. Really good read. So, any thoughts about maybe doing something similar for Quiet Riot or the post Ozzy period?
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing a coloring book. It's going to be easier. With a couple of connected dots,
Yeah.
Crayons not included.
Yeah. Draw the muzzle around Kevin's mouth.
Yeah, well, it's like this. You need a motivation. My motivation was to actually dispel a lot of the evil conspiracy theories about Randy's death. Oh, it was awful. 10, 12 years ago, when I first got online and started to discover, people were, spreading all these ugly rumors. And that's what I say, I got to, set the record straight. And so I did.
Look, if you want to look for craziness, the internet's the perfect place to start. But
tell me about it.
But I mean, you were around all this stuff. Now that's really interesting. Just real quick, side step back into what you said. Don Aries suggested there was some aggression in the cockpit as the plane was going.
Because there's a shot of the plane that was completely perpendicular approaching the bus. And when I stood right next to the point of impact, the lowest point of impact, it was just around my nose. And I'm 5'10". So if that plane would have been a couple of inches lower, it would completely crash into the bus rather than clip it and hit the trees and then crash into the garage that was attached to the house.
Right. So Randy may have been the hero in that sense, from preventing that guy from doing a kamikaze kind of thing.
From where I'm sitting, he's my hero.
Wow. That's fantastic. And I think you paid a wonderful tribute to him inside that book. It really is touching, and it really kind of brings in the details. You kind of already have done a coloring book in a way that it colors in the the spots of Randy that a lot of people are very curious about. So, Rudy,
no coloring is necessary. Yeah.
Thanks again so much, Rudy, for spending time with us.
Thank you, Nate. God bless you.